everybody, Ben Villani here again with another splendid episode of Watch, Learn, Code. Today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to show you how you can take HTML and CSS, the basics, what you've learned now, and take a simple idea such as a Photoshop mock-up or just a basic idea in your head and turn it into an actual website or web page. So what I've done here is I have created a simple mock-up of some type of Twitch template in Photoshop real quick. It took me about 10 minutes to do or less. I just have a header with a logo, 3 buttons for the navigation, 2 columns, so a column over here, a column over here, and then a footer, and then a background. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use basic CSS and HTML, nothing crazy, and show you how you can do it. So in here I used Open Sans as the font, and that's the only font I use, so that's what I'm going to grab, and I'm going to use Google Fonts to grab it, and I'll show you how you can do that. Before I go out and do that, I want to show you what I've done is my environment I've set up is stuff we've gone over in the past 2 videos with basic CSS and HTML. I have my CSS folder, which houses my style sheet, style.css, and then I have my images folder, which I have the Twitch logo in and then just that side image. So I'll be using those later, and I'll show you how you can refer to them. So before we get started, you can see over here my Watch, Learn, Code is just like the basic default font for a web page. So what I'm going to do is I need to use Open Sans. So I'm going to go over to Google Fonts. I'm going to search for Open Sans. It's going to come up here, Open Sans. I'm going to go to Quick Use. I'm going to check all these boxes because that's what I want. And you can see these numbers next to them. You can see 300, 300 italic, 400, 400 italic, and so on. And we'll be using those numbers later on for the weight. So I have all those selected. I'm going to come down here, and you can either do a standard link or else an import or JavaScript. I always go with the import feature, and I put it into my CSS document. So you're going to grab that import feature. You're going to go into your style.css and paste it at the top. Now you can see it just refers to this font file, and then it gives you all your font weights. So what I'm going to do right away is you go into Google Fonts still, and at the bottom now it says integrate your fonts with your CSS. You're going to say here's the font family. So you grab it, copy it, come over here. I'm going to target the body of my HTML document, and I'm going to paste this in here. So now when I come back and I refresh this, you can see the font changed. But let's say we want to take that H1 and we want to target it with a smaller weight. So let's say the 300 lightweight. So we're going to say font weight 300. Now when we refresh the page, we got a smaller lightweight font. So that's kind of what I want to show you. So now I got my font set up. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to come back in here and delete this. So the next thing I want to do is I want to grab the background purple color. So in Photoshop is something you really want to get used to and use because you're going to be using it in the real world once you get a job as a web developer. You want to come here, you want to use your color picker tool, and there's tons of different color picker tools out there too you can download, but Photoshop, I just live in this world, so it's the one I use. You can click on your foreground color. You're going to get a little eyedropper tool. Click in here, it's going to give you your hexadecimal code here. You want to copy this. And if I'm going too fast, you can always stop the video, pause it, come back, rewind, do whatever you need to do to catch up. I just want to keep this video kind of short. So we're going to go into our CSS document now. And we already have the body here set up. So what we're going to say is we're going to do background color. And we're going to say you put your hexadecimal code right in there. And then you refresh your page. Now the background is purple. Magic. So that's step 1. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set up the header and the footer. So first of all, we want to set up the header. So we're going to come into our index.html, and we're going to use the HTML5 element called header. And you can have multiple headers for different areas. So if you have an article, you can have header in there with different information. So what I like to do, I like to have this as the main header, and then inside this header, I like to have a div with an ID of header. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to use this ID because it's a selector, and I'm going to take it, and in my CSS document, I'm going to do the dollar or the number sign, and then I'm going to say for an ID because a period is class. So I'm going to say ID of header, and I'm going to say background color is white. You could either do white or FFF. FFF is white, 000 is black, and you'll be using those quite a bit. So now if we come back here and refresh, nothing's happened because there's no height and there's no width on it. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna say a height of let's say 100 pixels for now, and a width of 100% because we want it to go all the way across the screen. Refresh it. So now we have this. You can see, but you can see there's some weird stuff going on here, and those are default margins and paddings. And what you can do is you can use your inspect tool. I use Google Chrome. That's what you. There's Firefox too, but Google Chrome is your friend. So you can right click on the element and inspect element, and what it's going to do is going to bring up your developer tools. So you can highlight different areas here, and you can kind of see what's going on. So you can see I have this highlighted, and there's an orange around it on the body. And there you can see there's orange is margin and green is padding usually. So you can come over here, we have the body selected, you can see there's a margin of 8. What we can do is we can say, now that we know that, we can come back, close this, and put this guy back over here. And in the body, we can say margin 0. Now when we refresh, that's gone. It's flush against the top, just like our design. So we're moving along nicely. So what we want to do is we have in our design here, you can see that this all kind of lines up and it's within some type of container, and I call that the wrapper, and that's what everyone usually calls it. And we're going to have 2 different wrappers here. So inside this header now, we need to put a header inner with a wrapper so that it centers itself. So what we're going to do in this header, we need to come back into here and we need to make a div with an ID of head inner. And you can see I'm using camel casing, so the first letter is lowercase, the next word, the first letter is uppercase, and so on. It's a good practice, and it's the one I like, but you can do whatever you want. You're going to find your groove and you're going to use it. So we're going to come back here and we're going to say header inner, and we're going to, well, first of all, let's do this so you can kind of see what's going on. Let's put the logo in there. So we're going to, inside the header inner, we're going to say our image. Here's the HTML for image, and we're going to say the source. This is where we're going to go grab the image. We're going to say the images folder, and we're going to grab logo.jpg, because in our images folder, you can see the logo.jpg is there. So now when we refresh the page, you can see it's right there, but it's all the way to the left, and we don't want that. We want to have it centered, and we want to have it in some type of wrapper. So what we got to do is we have to take this header inner, and we have to style it. And we have to give it a height and a width, or we have to give it a width at least. So what we're going to do, because the height is the same as the actual header, so we're going to say height 100 pixels, and width is 100%. Max width is, actually let's not do a percent. We're not going to get into that right now. So let's do the width is 1280 pixels, because that's what we're going to want our design to be. So we'll do the width at 1280 pixels, and then we'll do, so now if we come back here and we refresh it, nothing's changed. And I'll kind of show you something here. I'm gonna put a background color of red on it so you can see what's going on. So we refresh it. I called it head inner. See, there's a mistake there. I thought it was header inner. It's head inner. And you'll do that from time to time. So now when we refresh it, you can see we have a red background here, and it's 1280 pixels wide and 100 pixels high, but it's still to the left. We don't want that. We want to have it centered. So what we got to do now is we have to come back in here in our head inner, and we have to say margin 0 auto. And this is kind of like a little trick to reset and center your element. So now when we refresh the page, it's now centered. So everything is good to go there. Now we have our wrapper here. And now what we have to do is for our container is set a container wrapper for the interior piece as 1280 pixels, and then center that, and then we can start with that. So that's the next thing we're going to do before we move on to the footer, I guess. We'll do that first. So what we want to do is get rid of this red background, and I apologize if I'm moving fast, but you can pause it and we can go from there. So we want to get rid of this red background, and now we're going to move on to, well, real quick here, let's take this and make our navigation real quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we want to give this image a class real quick of logo. And then we're going to come down here and say logo into our CSS. We're going to target the class with a period, and then we're going to say float left, because we want this to be always to the left. So it's not going to go anywhere because it's already to the left. So now what we want to do is we want to put in our navigation. So below this logo, I'm going to put a UL with a class of, say, nav top. And I could even put an ID too. I'm putting a class. So now I have an unordered list, but I don't have any items. So I'm going to take list items. You guys probably remember those. And then I'm just going to take it and I'm going to make 3, because we have 3 nav items in our mockup. Home, contact us, about us. So I'm going to say in here, we're going to say home, contact us, and about us. So now if we refresh it, we have this, and it's all jacked up, it's everywhere. We don't want that. So we need to come in here and we need to target this class, this UL, with nav top. We're going to come into our CSS document. We're going to say nav top, which is the UL, and we're going to say list style none, which gets rid of the periods. So that's gone. And then ULs have a default padding. You can right click on them. They have a default padding to the left. You can see this green area up here when I highlight over the T, and that's just something that's always there, and that's when you're going to want to look into resets and normalize later on, and we'll talk about those. Those are a little bit more advanced, and they have default margin on them too. So what I like to do is take this UL, instead of list style none, I'm going to put, or along with that, we're going to put padding 0 and margin 0. So when we refresh it, so here it's like this. Okay, so now what we need to do, we need to make it so it goes across the page instead of down the page. And what we're going to do there, we're going to say nav top, so the UL, and we're going to target the LIs with inside that UL. And we're going to say display inline block. Now when we refresh it, they are now horizontal instead of vertical. So now we need to make this UL away from this logo, because right now if you look at it, it's pushed up against it. So what we're going to do is we're going to float it right. So we're going to say this UL, we're going to say float right. Refresh it. It is now floated to the right. So what we need to do here still is we need to drop it down a little bit and increase the size, just like our mock-up here. Shows home, contact us, and about us. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we are going to experiment. So if we right click on our element here, like home, we can target the nav top, we can click on it, we can come over here and we can say position relative. And positioning, I'll have to go over that in another video. You have position absolute, relative, static, fixed, inherit. There's all kinds of different things. Relative kind of works within the element. Absolute, it's like everywhere unless it's within a relative element, then it stays constrained within that, but you can move it anywhere over things. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a video. But so we're going to take that position relative and we're going to say top 40 pixels. So it's moving it down, but we want to change the size real quick. So we're going to say font size, and we'll work with ems, and you can look up ems and pixels. Ems are a little bit better to work with in web because you're working with mobile devices and all kinds of different stuff. Let's say 1.2 em. No, that's too small. 1.5 em. That's better. And we're going to do font weight because we had the 300 for our design here. You can see. So home, contact, about us. There we go. So what we can do now, because this is just editing in the real time, once we refresh, it's going to go back normal. So we can take this and just copy it, and then now you can see once we refresh this page, it's going to go back. But being that I copied those styles, I can go into the nav top and just replace these styles. Paste it in there. Once I refresh, they've gone there. And now I had those separator lines in between the navigation items. So what I want to do is I want to take those and add those in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say nav top li. So we're going to target the li within the ul up there, and we're going to say before. And before the element, we're going to say content. And then anything that's inside these quotations is going to show up. So we're going to do this line. Now we come back and we have these lines. But oh no, we have a problem here. We have this one in front of the home. So what we need to do is we need to come over here and we need to say, we can just copy this. We can say nav top li first child before content nothing. So when we come back and we refresh, that's gone. So we had a little padding in between there, so you can take the before and you can say padding. So if you do it this way, you have 0 0 0 0, and it is top 0, right, let's do 4 pixels, bottom 0, left 4 pixels. It's a really easy way to do it, shorthand. Then we'll refresh it, they're spaced out a little bit, we're good to go. So that's our navigation right there. And if we want to have like a hover effect, we can do nav top li, and then we can say hover cursor pointer, and then we can say color. So I'll change it from the black to, we'll just do C2, 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 like a gray. So now when we come here and refresh it, if you hover it, it turns to gray. And then if we want to add some type of little transition to kind of make it fade out, we can just put transition all 0.3 seconds. And also put it on its parent element, which would just be the nav top li. So it fades in and out. So now when we refresh it and we hover over it, it's going to give you a little bit of a fade. It's a little bit of a delay. So that's looking good. Now we need to do the main content area. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our HTML now, because you can see we've been doing this all with CSS and not much images. Only two things we're going to be using are, that one side thing and then the logo. So we're good there. So what we're going to come in here now is we're going to jump out of the header and we're going to make a div with an ID. And if you see me doing the shorthand stuff, it's because I'm using a plugin called Emmet. And I'm going to make another video on how to use that too. But you want to make a div with an ID of main content. So we're going to take main content and we are going to come into our CSS and we're going to say main content. We're going to target it and it's an ID. And we're going to say the width is 1280 pixels because that's what we had our wrapper inside of our header. And we want it to line up with that. So we're going to say 1280 pixels. And then our background color, we need to come in to Photoshop and grab it. So we're going to use our eyedropper tool. Click in here. We can see it's 2D, 2D, 2D. Copy it. Come in here. And we're going to say background color is 2D, 2D, 2D. And then also we had a border on this of 10 pixels or so of white. So what we're going to say is we're going to say border 10 solid, 10 pixels, FFF. So we have a solid border that's 10 pixels wide and it's white. So now we have the background color, the width of it. What we want to do is we want to say height auto, so that if there's more content added to it, it can just grow in height and then you can scroll down the page. And then what we want to do is we want to use that center trick. We want to say margin 0 auto. And then also the color for the font inside this element, we want to say the color is going to be white. So any type of font that's in there is going to be white. So now if we come back here and we refresh, and then there's going to be the element here, and you can see it. There's a white border, but there's no content in it, so it's not showing the background. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some content in there real quick. We're going to come back into our HTML, and we're going to say h1 is header. So if we refresh, you can see there's our main content, but there's no separation like we have in our design. So what we need to do is we need to take our main content and we need to give it a margin in top and bottom of probably about 50 pixels or 60, maybe 60. We'll see what we're working with here. We'll come back to the style.css and we're going to say, this is after we've done a margin 0 auto, we're going to say margin top, we're going to say 50 pixels, margin bottom 50 pixels. So now when we come back here and we refresh it, we've dropped down like our design and we're making progress. So what we need to do is we need to grab this 800 italic for our header, our h1 element that we put in the page. We need to say any type of h1 that's inside this main content is going to be the font weight of 800 italic. So we're going to say main content h1, we're going to say font weight 800 italic. That should be right. Nope, it's not right. We can come back to our style CSS and just copy it. Weight 800, font style italic. Come back here. We have 800 in italic. Nice. So what we have to do now is, you can see in the design there's some padding around there, probably of 15 pixels on the sides and then 20 on the top and bottom, maybe 30. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the main content and we're going to say padding 30 pixels top, 15 pixels side, 30 pixels bottom, 15 pixels other side. So right, left. So now when we refresh it, you can see the padding has been applied and we're good to go. This header though, is a little small and it's not uppercase. So what we need to do is come into here for the H1 and say text transform uppercase. Refresh it. It's all uppercase. Maybe make it a bit bigger, so font size 2M. Let's do 2.3. 2.6. Okay, so you can see H1s, they have a little bit of margin on top and bottom. We're going to take that away from them. So we're going to say margin top 0. So now it got rid of the margin top. We want to keep the bottom because we want that separation between the paragraph we're about to put in. So inside the main content, we want to say main content P. So the paragraphs in the main content, we're going to say font weight, and the normal version is, let's see, 400. So we want to say font weight 400 for the paragraph. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come into our HTML, and we want to make 2 columns first before we do this. So let's delete this h1 header. We're going to make div with a class of left call, and then right below that we're going to make another div with a class of right call. So in our CSS we're going to say left call is with 50%. Float left. We're going to say right call is with 50%. Float right. So now we're going to come back in here, our left column, we're going to put that header back in. So we're going to say h1 header. We're going to refresh nothing's changed, but you can see there's an issue. Well, and what's going on here is there's a clear float that we have to worry about. There's floats that are kind of conflicting with each other, so we have to do a clear float, an element below these elements that clears the floats, so that there's not something confusing itself. So real quick, I want to do a paragraph with just some filler text. So lorem 100. And this is just adding lorem ipsum, some filler content. So there's one paragraph, and then I'll do maybe a paragraph below that of like 40. Oops, forgot the paragraph tags. So we're going to come back here and refresh. So we have another paragraph here. So if you want to add a clear float, and this is something you really don't do much anymore, but you still might have to, you can come below here, this right call, and put a div of clear with a class of clear. It's just an empty div. We're going to go to style.css, and we're going to say clear both. So now when we come back here and we refresh the page, those floats have been cleared, and now we can work with our two columns. We have our left column, and we're going to have our right column. Inside our right column, we're just going to put that image, that side image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into our HTML, and I'm going to grab this. I'm going to reference a side image in here. So inside the right call div, I'm going to say images / side.jpg. So now when I come into here and I refresh it, it's there, but it's floated to the left, and we want to put it in the center of this thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that center trick, and for this image, what we're going to say, we're going to give that image a class of side image. We're going to take that side image class, we're going to go into our style, and we're going to say side image display block margin 0 auto. So when we come in here and we refresh, it's now centered, and it's centered in this element here. It's not exactly like you can see here with our developer tools. Our right call is the 50. This is 50. It's not just like this because this is a little bit smaller. We have some padding things going on, but we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to show you. I'm showing you how you can do stuff like this. So next we have that set up. So you have your interior content. Now, if you wanted to, you could sit here all day and put, 1,500 paragraphs into the left column. And we refresh this, and then it just keeps going. It's going to keep expanding, so you can do stuff, and you can create different pages, link to them, put different content in here, put different content in your right one, and you're going to be winning. So we're going to take those away. We're not going to do that. We're going to do the last thing here, which is make the footer. So let me get rid of these guys. So the footer consists of this black bar down here, which goes all the way across, just like the header. So we're going to take this, and we're going to grab the color, which is 171717. We're going to come back to our HTML, and then outside of our main content, we're not going to go inside of it. We're going to go outside of it, just like the header is outside of it. We're going to say footer. In here, we're going to do the same thing with div with an ID of footer. And in here, we're going to just target this footer element, the ID. So we're going to come in here, footer, and we're going to say background color is that 171717. And we're going to give it a height of, let's say, 180 pixels with 100%. So now when we come back and we refresh it, that's all the way across the bottom. So it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty sweet. Now all we have to do is put the copyright Twitch 2015 in there. So we can do this. We can do a footer inside here. We can do div with an ID of foot inner, just like the head inner. And we're going to say a paragraph of copyright Twitch TV 2015. So what we're going to say is we're going to grab this footer inner first, this foot inner. So we're going to say ID of foot inner is going to be width 1280 pixels, height 180 pixels, same as the footer. Margin 0 auto to center it. We want to have all the color in it, all the font to be white, so FFF. And then we want to add padding to the top to bring it down. Let's say 30 pixels. And then we also want to have the text centered, so text align center. So now, when we come back here, let's see if we got it on the first try. Refresh. Oh, it's pretty nice. But we need to, let's see. Yeah, that looks about right. Maybe a little bit smaller. We'll see. I want to make the font weight light, so the 300. So we'll do font weight 300. Let's see how this looks. Alright, it looks pretty good. What I want to do though, because I noticed there's this issue at the bottom. I made a mistake with the footer inner. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the height on the foot inner. So we're going to say height auto. And we're going to refresh it. And that gets rid of that little gap at the bottom. So now we got our copyright and we're set to go. Let me get rid of all these extra paragraphs. So you can see we took our design from Photoshop. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And we've taken it and we have made it pretty much exactly the same. So here's the Photoshop design and here is the website. So it's pretty close. You could tweak the padding like on this Twitch element here, this image. You could just even put a break in there. So BR tag above the image and it'll drop it down a bit and work with that. So that's pretty much it. And if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know. Hopefully you learned something. I know it went a little fast and it's a little bit of a long video, but you know, take the time, pause it, learn from it. Let me know if you want to see anything else. But enjoy and watch for the next video.